I'm meteorologist Gary Lezak. Welcome to The Forecast with Gary Lezak. It's brought to you by Results Personal Fitness. I just
look
looked
at
at
those results.
Look at that. Come
oh
on.
My
Look at that.
God!
I've been eating healthy too lately.
Have you really?
Yeah.
You're looking good. Very lean.
Thank you. Well, thank you to David Schlossman at Results Personal Fitness.
The results are there. I can't believe you have a permit for a gun show. Every week we do this. Always something. Bringing out the guns.
Yeah. Well, I got to get even better for pool season's coming. So, but
Ooh, good point.
Results are 135th and Metcalf, and David Schlossman has been training me for like 25 years, and thank goodness it's a great way to stay into shape. Get that personal trainer. So go to Results, call David Schlossman at Results Personal Fitness. Our other sponsor is Uphold Home.
Uphold Home or Homes?
Uphold Home.
Uphold
Home. If you're getting onto your golden years and your loved one needs to you're thinking about putting them into a home, why not stay at home and possibly even get healthier? That's the whole system behind Uphold Home, to hopefully stay at home, get a good fitness plan, health plan, and all that.
You're switching up the stigma. So the idea being like, oh shoot, the idea is like, oh, you're declining. No, but what if you were on the upswing?
It's possible.
What if you use it as an opportunity? Yeah,
absolutely. So
I like it.
Home and Results.
Good
Personal
concept.
Fitness. All right, it's called The Forecast. We're going to be forecasting all kinds of things today.
Yeah, are we? I guess that's a good way of putting it.
I'm going to forecast your next few weeks. You're going to have a great...
Me personally?
You're going to have a great few weeks ahead.
I did have a fortune cookie last night at the China Hut.
What did it say?
It was about having friends when you need them most.
Really?
It was very uplifting, and I thought, boy, there's probably going to be some times I'm going to need this. Of course, I was sitting at a table with friends, and I told them I was going to have them all help me with tiling and sheetrock in my building, so... I don't know how well that went over.
Well, anyway, I'm forecasting good fortune.
Man, that is great. I appreciate that.
This is Bob Lyons.
Hello.
Bob and I actually work together with Weather 2020. And
we do lots of fun.
We have had quite a few weeks here, and this is a big year for our company as we bring innovative technology and methodology to the world to help save lives and businesses.
Absolutely.
But we just went to Miami. Tell us about that.
Gosh, yeah, boy, we have had some weeks. It kind of seems like it was forever ago, but it was very recently. So yes, we went down to Miami. We were in the Natural Disasters Expo, right? And so we were showcasing first and foremost our hurricane predictions, and met an eclectic group of individuals. Number one, Miami, fascinating town. Yeah. I don't know how anybody's doing it down there, but everybody's gorgeous. Everybody looks like they're the most successful person you've ever met.
In shape. They're like,
everybody's in shape.
It's ridiculous.
And stunning, and like just wearing, I don't know, all of these brands that I hear people are supposed to love. It is just a strange. I've never seen so many Lambos and just things, I don't know, just tearing down the street. It was a wild experience. It was very fun.
And the weather was great too. So,
it was gorgeous. I always think about this each year. I'm like, no, I'm fine. I like seasons. I love winter because you love snow. I love snow. I don't think I can move somewhere where the weather is the same all the time, right? Yeah. But then, it got to be the end of February, and I didn't realize I was getting the winter blues until you get to Miami and get some sunshine, and you go, this is the most rejuvenating thing I've had.
It was in the 80s every day.
Gorgeous. Sunshine, 80s.
We got lucky with the weather there, not even humid even. So,
yeah, it was great.
So it's fantastic. But, of course, they get hurricanes there, and I could live there because I love watching cumulus clouds build into thunderstorms. I get a lot of those. Yeah. And then occasionally you have a hurricane, which can be deadly and dangerous and scary. And so what we're doing with Weather 2020, we're trying to help reduce that fear by providing advance warning. Some people say, what good does it do to know there might be a hurricane 6 months in advance? But there is a lot of good. Instead of being scared, be prepared.
Absolutely, yeah. We met, it was great. So the expo took place over 2 days. We had a very nice booth. We dressed up. I thought we looked pretty sharp. We had
You wore a tie.
I wore a suit and a tie.
That's amazing.
I know. Well, I like it. I always tell people, like, I feel like I'm playing dress up, like I'm a little kid playing dress, because I don't dress fancy very often. So I actually really like it. I know there's always like the stigma of like, I hate wearing a tie. Like, I use it as an opportunity. You almost feel like you're putting on a costume, like it's a whole persona. It's fun to me. I mean, I guess you did it for 50 years, and so, like, I can imagine you're wearing a T-shirt right now. It's got to be exhausting.
I did it for a very long time.
Yeah.
it's good not to have to wear a tie every day. I put on a tie every day, and of course Eric Love. That's a whole other segment. Eric Love he used to be at Nordstrom. Now he's at Hall's, and my whole wardrobe was an Eric Love wardrobe.
Oh, that's excellent. Like selection or tailor?
Selection. He taught me how to dress, how to color coordinate. The guy is a genius.
Smooth.
So go to Hall's. Should be one of our sponsors.
How about that? Yeah.
So
that's awesome.
Eric Love is the guy's name. But yeah.
So yes, we dressed up. We had the whole presentation. It was great. We had a steady stream of people that were very interested. I thought it was great too because a lot of people were in there. Some people came with a level of like stigma of just like, come on, what are you telling me? Are you really doing this? But everybody had an open mind. That's what I always appreciate. Even if some people came with like a heavy dose of skepticism, they at least kept an open mind and go, well, okay. I mean, I'll keep an eye on you. So I thought it was good. But there was plenty of people too who were just like, we need this. How can we work with you? What do we do? So it was a very good spectrum of I don't know, passion, interest, you name it. It was a very good experience. Yeah. And it helped us hone our message too.
Right.
Because when you have to...
Because we got to practice over and over again.
Man, oh boy, we did. Yeah. That was a lot of hours of chatting. But it was a very good exercise on all of our ends, I think. Yeah. And very well received.
Yeah, so it's amazing is that, since that expo, we've gotten some feedback from people. We've gotten some potential customers. One of them is a customer that has big shipping lane problems.
Yeah.
And they have these disruptions when their supply doesn't get to port. They can be $200,000 to millions of dollars in disruptions. Sure. They sent me a list of 17 of their disruptions, and I analyzed the LRC. Last year's pattern happened to be cycling at close to 64 days.
Right.
And I was able to line up 14 of their 17 events they sent to us to line up with the LRC. In other words, there is a predictability. And then we threw out, is it going to help you? Can you reduce your loss if you know 50 days, 60 days in advance? And they said, absolutely.
Right.
There's a way to plan and at least reduce their losses. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to help businesses mitigate their losses, and we'll help save lives by advance warning of when a hurricane's going to move in.
Yeah, and it's very cool because this was an instance where, we've discussed logistics a lot within the company between you and me because, it's like, how do you apply this? Who can use it? How would they use it? And we oftentimes we had a lot of inquiry from people trying to do shipping lanes on land, highways, intermodal transit, whatever. But this was the first time I feel like somebody was like, well, can we apply it to boats and wind? And, well, sure, I guess that's a good point. We hadn't even really considered it, and then they were nice, or gracious enough to say, well, here's some incidents of disruptions, and then you were able to take that from a scientific perspective and say, okay, let's go and see, this. We hadn't really thought of this particular application, but there's no reason it shouldn't apply, and you were able to kind of reverse engineer and go, actually, yeah, it does look like there's indicators here. This could be useful, so it's great.
Absolutely. So since then, there were others that walked around that expo, learned about what we're doing.
Sure. Yeah.
And we ended up in this article, this very big article.
Right. Well, if I may set this up, it was interesting because
Please do.
Well, we were in the booth, right? And so I get an email while we're there. And it's an email. I'm like, I'm so-and-so from such and such. I would love to interview Gary Lezak about the LRC. Please contact me if possible. And so we chit-chat about it, like, well, this is kind of interesting, because you do get interview requests. You've been on a lot of radio shows and whatnot, but this one seemed more formal, I suppose would be the way I would say it was received. And so we're like, okay, well, this is the thing. We got nothing to hide. No reason not to do it, right? So you responded and said, sure, let's set it up, and onward. The rest is internet history at the moment.
Right, and I'm glad I did that interview with her. And Maddie Bender, I think is her name, who wrote the article, and she heard from us on what we tell them what the LRC is able to do by understanding the cycling pattern up there. And we make these predictions for Hurricane Ian 6 months to maybe even 10 months before. And even today, as we sit here talking on this podcast, on the forecast, we forecasted a severe weather outbreak for this week to possibly set up in an area over the south, okay? And,
right.
And it is literally lining up as we expected. A 65-day outlook predicted as good as the 1 day or 2 day outlook from the Storm Prediction Center. They're now talking about how it could be an outbreak tomorrow, definitely a chance of some significant tornadoes. Mississippi is the target, and we didn't just take a stab and say, hey, right around March 20th or 25th, there's going to be one. It's based on the LRC. You can go back scientifically, analyze the weather patterns, and make a prediction based on the technology that we have.
So let me ask you this, and this is something we are going to get deeper into the tidbits of this article. And one of those is going to be a criticism that's just like, okay, so is this naturally severe weather season for these particular areas, right? Because this is something that's like, oh, you said it's going to rain on what is statistically the rainiest day of the year. Of course that's going to be a win, right? So let me ask you this. For the areas that we did predict these severe weather outbreaks, is it statistically already likely? Like, because to me, I say, all right, that's a bad criticism because it didn't happen last week, right? If this is such a like, oh, well, if you throw a dart, you're liable to hit a wall, right? Because the wall's right there. Of course you're going to hit it, right? But the idea is, well, no, if this is such a like, well, there's always severe weather during severe weather season. It wasn't last week, right? So this is a win. This feels like a win.
Right. You know, I tweeted this morning a video of our 65-day forecast compared to the Storm Prediction Center's forecast.
Right.
We have made 11 predictions for this season. 11 predictions of when severe weather will happen. Okay, and this is the fourth of our 11 predictions.
When and where?
When. It's for when and where, and a little bit of how and why. But
sure.
we have our proprietary method, but a little bit of that, because this one happening this week, while we're recording this, it happens to be the week of March 20th to 25th that we predicted this outbreak. But this year's cycle is, roughly 7 weeks plus a day or so. You go back to the previous cycles and you'll see severe weather outbreaks. The severe weather is cycling on schedule. It is hitting when it hits. So
right.
We have made 4 predictions this season. All 4, after this week happens, will be 4 for 4. And someone might argue, well, what happened in between? What happened to those severe weather outbreaks? There weren't any. The only severe weather that is happening in March is directly related to what has happened in previous cycles. Now, in May, it gets a little noisy with severe weather.
Sure.
In May, as soon as you have the warmth, to get severe weather, you have to have humidity. You have to have the right thermodynamics. So the warmer temperatures and higher humidity from the Gulf of Mexico, and combined with these storm systems, and you get the conditions for tornadoes and severe weather. So in May, it's now all of a sudden warm and humid everywhere, and so even the smaller disturbances start producing severe weather, so it gets noisy.
Yeah.
But still, the bigger events are still likely to happen as we expected. So to answer your question,
big widespread event,
we're not just throwing darts. We threw 11 darts, I guess, and we're 4. Imagine throwing 4 straight bullseyes. We just threw 4 straight bullseyes.
How about it?
Right down the middle of that 50. It says 50 on the bullseye or whatever it is.
Sure.
You get your 50 points. It wasn't the 25 on the outside. We literally went right. We're going right near the middle of the bullseye, and for the first 4.
Right.
Now we made 11 of these severe weather predictions. We have our hurricane predictions coming. Every single day's weather is predicted by our model. Not every single day's weather is going to be accurate, but the bigger storms that produce severe weather are more likely to be right.
Absolutely. So this criticism, again, that we'll get into in the article too, but it applies here, I think, to a certain degree. It's difficult because it's like, if you walk into a casino, obviously you're going to gamble because there's gambling in the casino,
right?
And it's just so that mentality of trying to second guess what we're doing just because, like, oh, sure, severe weather is more likely during this part of the year in these certain areas of the year or regions of the nation or whatever. So of course you predicted it. It's not the case. It's not what we're doing. We're not making broad scale predictions of like, okay, for the month of March in the United States, there's probably going to be something. But I feel like that's how it's being presented.
Yeah, we're predicting where and when. The LRC is the only model, no one in the world, as far as we know,
right,
that's able to accurately predict where and when something's going to happen. So one of our big predictions, just to put it out there, and it's going to be in our press release coming up soon.
What are we going to hear?
Okay. It's the hurricane forecast for between Miami and Daytona Beach, somewhere in that area.
Right.
Getting hit right around the peak of hurricane season, September 10th or 12th. So the critics will come in and go,
well, of course.
Well, every year there's a hurricane between Daytona Beach and Miami around September 10th. That is not true.
There is not. Yeah. That is a false equivalency to
it
reality.
Doesn't happen every year or every other year. They do. Miami to Daytona Beach might have a hurricane once every 5 years. I don't know what the stats are. I'll find out what those are.
I've been thinking
once every 5 years or so, it would be 20% chance. Not what we're saying. Right now, it's a 65% chance. And in the article, it says the controversial claim rocking the weather world. So this is the article.
Yeah, read this title for us.
The controversial claim rocking the weather world. And it says underneath it, I don't know, I do have my glasses with me.
Well, so it is, but there is a specific title to this article, right? And so
do you have it called up?
Well, I guess you're right. So it is the Daily Beast. The article is written by Maddie Bender. It is called "Inside the Controversial Claim Rocking the Weather World." It came out on March 15th, right? So it is interesting because we were just sort of taking a look at it. I don't know. I thought, well, sure. I mean, press is good press, whatever the case. It came out. It did definitely strike a nerve in like the Twitter world because specifically on the Daily Beast Twitter handle, they get the average impressions of an article is, I don't know, 8,000 to 10,000 impressions of whatever Twitter considers an impression, whatever is public facing to us that we can see. And this one's sitting at easily, 200,000 or so impressions. Just since it came out. A lot of comments, a lot of sharing. So obviously it was interesting enough. It was compelling enough to a whole lot of people, more so than the average article on the Daily Beast. Right. So that right there I think is kind of fascinating. Now, who knows? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Was it people hate reading it? I don't know. But I still feel like I want people to have an open mind. I think it has to be presented and therefore it can be discussed.
You would think scientists would have an open mind, but the scientists, when it comes to the LRC, they tend to have a very closed mind because this is a paradigm shift in meteorology.
Right. So I guess that segues into, so it is interesting. As a whole, you and I discussed it. It's a good article. I think Maddie did a pretty good job of presenting the case.
I thought she did a great job.
I think she presents it as like, here is information. I talked to this person. I talked to this person. This is what this person said. This is what this person says. I don't know. It's like it's meant for you to kind of make your own. She's not necessarily. I kind of, when I first read it, I thought, oh man, is she going to editorialize this? And is it going to be very like, I don't agree? Which sometimes to me, like, well, you can't claim independent journalism and then be injecting opinion. She did not do that. I agree completely. I think she was very, very good and neutral in her presentation of the cases that were brought. I don't necessarily think, though, that the other scientific experts, I feel like they were either uninformed or a little disingenuous in the way that they discussed it, which, I don't know, is fair. So, like, if I'm one of them and somebody calls me up and says, hey, do you feel qualified to discuss this topic, right? I'm probably going to say no, because even if I'm all right, let's say I'm an atmospheric scientist or I'm an insert scientist type here. Can you discuss this thing? I go, well, I'm a scientist. It sounds like it's about that. Sure. So maybe you have the confidence to say, yes, I can. But I don't think they knew enough about what we're doing to be able to make a fair claim. And I think their quotes were indicative of that. I think they were telling.
They're defensive, right?
They're pretty defensive. Yeah, for sure.
Or they sort of like on Twitter, and these are PhDs, doctors of meteorology, okay?
Yeah.
That come in here and they say sorry, snake oil, or impossible. This is impossible, and I'm like, wow, okay, well, let's have a discussion about it. So I did email a couple people, and one of them, Dr. Gensini, he's in tornado research, and I've been in communication with him for years.
Yeah, you got a history with him, right?
I think he's in Northern Illinois University, where he is at now. But he's doing research on trying to predict tornadoes, and Weather 2020 and the LRC has a solution that they should pay attention to. And so,
right.
so I
like to hope so.
So I reached out to him, and of course, no response. There's not even a, hey, Gary, very interesting. Yeah, I'll do a Zoom meeting with you. Show me what your research is showing.
Yeah.
They won't even talk to me. And the reason I think is possibly I'm a broadcast meteorologist.
Sure.
I'm not a PhD.
There's a stigma
How
with it,
could
maybe.
I have come up with something that all these other meteorologists haven't? I understand all that. But what if we have, which we have?
Well, so I kind of have two points on this, I suppose. It's interesting to me because I feel like there's probably a time where somebody goes, hey, well, imagine if I presented a case to you. I said, hey, Gary, I can move at 70 miles an hour. That's it. That's the only thing I'm saying. I'm saying I can move at 70 miles an hour. I'm not saying I can run 70 miles an hour. I'm not saying I can walk. I'm not saying my legs move me, but I can say it. So somebody would go, no, you can't.
Right.
There's just no way. I'm leaving out the fact that I'm traveling in an internal combustion-driven automobile, right? So to me, so it's like, all right, somebody hears something, they instantly have a reaction and go, you can't do that. But they don't have an understanding of the context of what you're doing.
Right.
And so I feel like a lot of the quotes, when one of the quotes in there in particular says like, and it's almost too telling. I don't know if I put it down here because I want to get it right. I think it's only fair that we get it right.
Read it.
Let me see here. Oh, maybe I don't have it. I'll paraphrase then, and feel free to shred me if I get it wrong. It's along the lines of you can't do this with today's models, and it's in reference to the concept of chaos theory. And I thought it was kind of funny because the individual who sort of came up with chaos theory is referenced in the article as though he was a contributor to the article, but he's not there because it's an MIT scientist.
Right.
But whatever. I mean, that's just a little nitpicky.
Yeah, they think you can't get specific past 14, 15 days. The going statement within the meteorology scientific forecasting community is there's a 15-day limit on predicting the weather down to any kind of specificity. Sure. So the LRC allows us to predict this week's severe weather outbreak, where and when it's going to happen within a couple of days.
Right.
And so we're proving over and over again that statement is just absolutely provably wrong by our results.
It's based on incorrect assumptions. So you're presenting a strong opinion based on an incorrect assumption, which I think is just kind of unfair to then present it in this sort of like academically professional setting. But I mean, such is life, because we've brought this up on this podcast before, where we would agree with the statement that you can't predict long-range forecasting weather conditions with today's models. We agree with that statement. We've been saying we agree with that statement. You can't, which is why we have our own model. It's a different methodology. It is a different way of doing it.
We have what we believe is tomorrow's model.
Absolutely. So had you asked somebody in this article, like, are you even familiar with the way the LRC is predicting weather? You know, like that was not a quote in there.
Right.
They should have been like, actually, no, I've never looked into it. Right. Would be my guess. The answer.
Right. And if they've never looked into it, how can they say it's impossible?
Exactly.
Right.
So that's what it's one thing to say like, yes, I read their paper and I did all, and I know how they're doing it, and I'm familiar with the methodology, and I don't think you can do it. Okay, fine. That's at least a fair discussion. I'm willing to have that discussion. I'm not willing to have a discussion that's with somebody that says you can't do it with today's models, and not knowing that we're not using today's models.
And just to anybody listening to this right now or watching us, let me give you a few examples of this year, just so we just throw it out there.
Okay, sure.
This year's cycle is close to 50 days. The river of air above us is cycling at close to 50 days. Last year was closer to 64, 65 days. Every year a unique pattern sets up. But this year's 50-day cycle, if you probably saw this might be a while back, depending on when you're listening to this, but Los Angeles just had a tornado, a legitimate, looked like Kansas tornado.
Isn't that something?
There's debris flying through the air, and the experts are like, hey, we'll let you know if it's confirmed as a tornado. That's a tornado, okay? There's debris flying all over the place.
It's an event.
And you see the funnel spinning around.
Sure.
You don't have to wait for confirmation from the National Weather Service. It's a tornado.
Yeah.
Now, 50 days ago, there was not a tornado, but there was a really strong storm in California.
Sure.
Okay, and that January version of the storm, January 30th, had a whole spin circulation with rain and thunderstorms rotating around Southern California. And you could predict, hey, there might be severe weather. The chance of a tornado in LA is always so low. You wouldn't predict that.
Of course.
But the storm happened 50 days ago. Minneapolis had a snowstorm February 21st, 22nd, 23rd, and 50 days before that 13-inch snowstorm. They had a 15-inch snowstorm 50 days before. California got hit right while Minneapolis was getting hit, and 50 days later, California got hit again.
Right.
We can show you example after example after example. Once you know what the pattern is and what the cycle is, you can make predictions, and we make the predictions, and we are getting them right over and over and over again. Today on Twitter, we're 4 for the first 4 predictions we made. Somebody says, why don't you tell us when you fail? Okay, I said, okay, we've made 11 severe weather predictions this year for this season. We're 4 for the first 4. Okay, let's see how we do on the other 7.
Sure.
Okay, we're probably going to be 9 out of 11 or 10 out of 11 or 7 out of 11. And the 4 others will be a miss. But will they? Let's see if they do. Right now, we're on a roll.
Right. Again, we're predicting conditions, favorable conditions, right? And so
for severe weather.
For severe weather. So there is a chance that there's some other influence that might affect.
We're sort of predicting that the Storm Prediction Center is going to issue
That's
an
a good way
outlook.
of putting it. Absolutely.
We're sort of predicting, hey, in 65 days, there's going to be a severe weather outbreak in this area. Okay, a very good chance of that. The Storm Prediction Center will be predicting a risk 1 or 2 days out. We're giving you 65 days warning.
So this is one of the items in this article too. One of the individuals who were quoted. I guess we don't. You can read the article. We won't call anyone out by name. It's not necessary. But in there, this individual states like, well, why aren't they talking about when the model doesn't work? Gary never brings up when it doesn't work. I thought that was a particularly stupid argument, almost a lowbrow argument, because like who sits there and is yelling at Google and says like, how come you're not showcasing all of your failed projects? You know, not to compare us with Google or anything, but like what individual, what companies that goes out of their way to continually present like this is when we failed miserably. This was the times when we were at our dumbest. Like, I don't know. I just think it's a disingenuous way to look at like the analytics of something. Now that being said, I assume that statement was being put forth by somebody who's trying to discuss the academic rigors of the scientific process. Okay, so I'm going to make a disclaimer here because I'm probably going to sound like I'm down on science or whatever the case. I'm obviously not. Like, the scientific process is what's gotten us here into the modern civilization in which we live, where all of our needs are met and everybody's safe and everything is great. Okay, that is a very good thing. It is a good system. And the concept of peer-reviewed in its pure state is good. I agree with it. Now, with that said, the peer-reviewed process, to me, is one of these things that sort of like lived so long that the cracks sort of start to develop. Because there can be perverse incentives, there's unfortunate bias, there's greed, there's egos, it is what it is, there's rigidity. So the scientific process in this, the peer-reviewed process, they set up fences, okay, to prevent quacks from claiming they have facts.
Exactly.
That's good. Yeah. That's a good thing. You should do that. We need that. There's a lot of quacks. There's profit incentive for people to present fake science and yada, yada. So that's good. Those fences are a good thing, okay? But those fences have become so tall and so rigid now that you prevent outside thinking sometimes, right? Because the people who are in there, they're in academia. They are the people who've already submitted the papers saying this is how things are, okay? And so this is the only way they can be. They're already biased to their existing belief structure, all right? So the criticisms in this article were that like, all right, so we've put forth a peer-reviewed paper. We submitted to a journal. I don't even remember what year it was. What year was that? 2018
it got published.
2018 it got published,
5 years ago.
So the criticism was of where it was published, all right? Now, I guess I'll let you paraphrase the process that we went through, because it's not a straightforward process. Everybody wants to ask, like, well, why didn't you submit it to this? Well, why didn't you publish it there? Blah, blah, blah. We did. We tried all of these things.
Right. So here's what happened. You know, first of all, it took about a year and a half to write this paper. It was not something that we wrote in a very short period of time.
Sure.
We had revision after revision after revision after revision after revision.
By expert after expert, too.
We had revisions, and I threw it out to some peer review people. Before it got peer reviewed by the journal that published it, I had 3 prominent scientists in the government missile range area of Las Cruces, New Mexico region.
Right.
And I got reviews from them. Oh, this is interesting. I guess it's possible. Here's where my concerns are. And I rewrote the article based on a few of their reviews that came in. So just know that was already peer reviewed before it got peer reviewed the way it did.
Right.
Now, I did, once it was written and we felt it was ready, we presented it to the BAMS, Bulletin of American Meteorological Society, the prominent scientific journal that meteorology gets published in, and we got rejected. We got rejected with almost very, very little understanding of what we were doing.
Yeah.
They just didn't like me as a broadcast meteorologist, the style I had, the writing style. It's really, really a very well-written article. Okay, it's not technically sound and written by the way journals are written that I don't think anybody, an average person, can even understand unless you're a PhD. Okay, it's not written by a PhD person that's way deep into the weeds of algorithms,
right? Or who has lived in academia for a decade. By the time you get to that, that's your environment, that's your ecosystem.
I had a different writing style, but in the paper we made some really key points that we can talk about in another segment.
Sure, yeah.
But we got rejected by BAMS. Then I went to the National Weather Association for their publication, and that journal, I think it was Journal of, I forget what it is, but whether it was Monthly Weather Review or whatever, but NWA rejected us.
Right.
They rejected us without even going through one review.
Exactly. And this is where the difficulty lies with this process. Because it'd be one thing if they came out and said, like, okay, well, we rejected it because of X, Y, and Z, and this. It's just kind of an outright rejection because it doesn't necessarily fit the template of expectation. And then they'll cite things like poor writing. Okay, I mean, fine. I feel like that's an exceptionally objective concept. I saw one of those criticisms. It
is absolutely written really well, and I think most English teachers would say it's written very well. Okay, it's just not technically written the way a meteorologist that has a PhD at a university that's written 100 papers it writes it, okay? I would love to write it that way, but I had a different style.
Right, indeed. And so that's where part of like the rigidity of those fences that have grown to like protect this process, it's almost like, well, no matter what, if you're not wearing these shoes, if you're not wearing the right pants and the right color tie, you don't even get in the gate. We don't even talk to you. Right. We already consider you a quack no matter what. Not to mention, we are sort of bringing forth a new concept, and I wouldn't even say that it undoes existing traditional meteorology. I don't think it flies in the face of it. Now, it flies in the face of the concept of everybody saying, you can't predict past day X, or it's just chaos, and nobody can ever do anything with chaos, right? I mean, those are big, bold claims that I think it's probably a good thing that somebody tackles it.
Right, and I tackle all those issues in the paper. We discuss, the 15-day limit in traditional weather forecasting. What if this hypothesis actually is valid, which it is, okay? And the proof will be out in the next a few decades. As 1,000 peer-reviewed papers, there will be 1,000 peer-reviewed papers on what we're writing. We just happen to be the first one. But I have friends, very smart meteorologists, high up there, very intellectual guys.
Sure.
They said it's great we got it published because at least it's out there, it's on record, and so it isn't quack. It's amazing, and it's out there. So we have other articles as well.
Agree. It's just a tough process. But the problem is now that becomes a very easy criticism for somebody who's in that ecosystem to say like, oh, well, they didn't do it my way, so it's bad. So it must be bad and it must be wrong.
Right.
Again, I love having open-minded discussions with anybody. I'm open-minded to us being wrong. I know you hate that I admit this, but I'm like, I will always stay a skeptic. I'm a skeptic about everything. I'm a skeptic about what I'm eating, right after this. I'm skeptic of whether... That's the pessimism,
Pessimism, optimism.
I mean, am I going to wake up tomorrow? I'm skeptical of whether I'm going to wake up tomorrow. I don't really know.
I don't know either.
Right. That's exactly I
hope you do.
Thank you. That's very sweet. So that's a a type of open-mindedness to me that I think a lot of individuals, it's a cheap way to try to poke holes in something where you then don't even have to give it any mind, right? And I thought it was kind of a cheap attack in the article, again, by a bunch of individuals. Well, not a bunch. One particular individual who's in there, who I'm sure is in the ecosystem, who clearly states, I've done peer reviewing. I do this. I'm in the peer review. I'm in the academia. And that's great. We need those people. We need that system. That is fantastic. But I also think we need those people to be maybe a little more open-minded at times, right? Because you got to think, like back in the day, if everybody's riding horses and somebody says, okay, we need a better way of getting around. Everybody goes, well, we got horses. Why would we ever want to go around anywhere not on a horse, right? And so then somebody goes, well, I have this idea. It involves 4 wheels and an engine.
Wow.
There's no horses, right?
Amazing.
And everyone just like, you should stop talking about that because we got horses.
I know.
And horses are great, right? So then, okay, so we have cars. And then everybody's like, we have cars. This is amazing. We're doing amazing things. This is the way everything should be. We should never move forward. We should never even look at other ways of doing it, of traveling. Why would we ever? But then somebody goes, well, there's a whole lot of air up there. Maybe we could travel through the air. And everybody goes, but we travel on land. Why would we travel in the air?
Birds can fly, but we can't fly.
Birds are fly, but there's no way we can fly. Don't even think about it. Don't research it. Just put it out of your mind because I drive a car and I think it's the only way to get around, right? So these are the way that like progressions in society work and progressions in science work. So it's good because you got to think about it. We've all seen the video of people flapping wings, jumping off cliffs, saying like, this is how you fly through the air. That's a quack. That shouldn't make it through the scientific process. That's fair, okay?
Right.
But when you start to present actual theories and you say, all right, well, there's vectorization and you have lift and velocity and all these things. Whatever. Bernoulli's principle can get us through. Great. That is a scientific methodology that's worth listening to. All we're saying is we're bringing something new. It kind of goes against some level of traditional science or thinking, which is an old way of thinking, and so people get defensive.
I don't know if it goes against it. It goes.
That's a good point.
It goes against
you're right, actually.
the way meteorologists and scientists think about it.
Sure.
It doesn't necessarily go against the science of meteorology because I can take the 500 millibar maps, and you've seen many examples.
Oh, yeah.
Bob, you see this storm system? See how it's shaped? See how it is? See how the overall pattern is over the whole northern hemisphere? That's going to return. And I'll tell you when. And then it returns.
Yeah.
Okay?
Oh, yeah.
And it's not exactly the same. It's as Gary England said years ago. I saw it, Lezak. He called me Lezak. I saw it, Lezak. I saw it. It's the same, but different.
But different.
Okay, because the July version is going to look different than the January version. But in July, the pattern we're in now will be cycling back through when the LRC says it will be.
Right.
Will be. So, but yeah, it's like it's in a new direction in meteorology
for sure.
And as she concluded the article, I love the way she concluded. Maddie concludes the article by one big statement. She says, if Lezak is right, then this will be the biggest discovery in meteorology since chaos theory.
Right.
If Lezak is wrong, it'll be a disaster and not of the natural kind.
That is great.
You know?
Yeah.
Because
that's a good quote. That's good journalism.
It will be a disaster if I'm wrong, but I'm not wrong.
Well, it's worth looking at.
Right.
Right? I mean,
and
come on.
what it is probably far beyond what I'm presenting.
Yeah.
Okay?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Okay, I simplify it. That's how me as a broadcast meteorologist does. But I learned about it a long time ago, 1987, 1988. Dr. George Fishbeck, an icon in Los Angeles TV history. My idol growing up, he would show 500 millibar maps, explain how they had a very big storm coming in. This is 1978, 79. I have friends saying, oh, we've never had a winter like this before in California. Well, they just had a tornado. I'm not going to say they always have that. But they've had stormy, wet winters in the past as well. But it's just fascinating.
Well, if I may put a pin in this with a quick story. I'm sure I've talked too much, and my name's not even the title, so why am I talking this much? But we'll
change the title.
No, that was not.
The Forecast with Gary Lezak and Bob Lyons.
Yeah, I mean, maybe just tiny. No, I don't need any recognition. It's totally fine. So when I was in college, there was a physics professor. His name was Sergei Kopeikin, right? And he was this very fascinating Russian professor in physics. And he was doing very interesting study about gravitational waves, right? Well, in his theory was that gravity actually propagates in waves versus being a consistent force, which is what the majority of everything is based on, right? Like from a physics perspective. So the university was trying to deny him tenure. The entire physics department hated him, right? Like I hate that I just use it because that's going to already sound like a YouTube thing, like physics hates this guy, but. Right. This was 20 some odd years ago, so it was the case. He was not a popular fellow, and so he was trying to get tenure, and everybody in the department was trying to shut it down because he was doing research that disproved, like you said, hundreds of millions of dollars of research that these particular individuals had devoted their life to, right? And so they just didn't want to hear it. He has gone on now. He did get tenure, and he's gone on now to continue his research into the propagation of gravitational waves. And it's a bigger industry now. More people finally kind of open their eyes, and it's just an open-mindedness. I'm not sitting here saying he's right, blah, blah, blah. Look, he was right all along. I'm just saying, like, it took people having an open mind, and it was worth saying, like, okay, well, maybe there is something there. Instead of a group of people saying, like, don't even talk about it.
Right. That's what I'm getting. Don't even talk about it. And while they try to figure out, the researchers right now, they're actively trying to figure out how to predict tornado season, how to predict how many tornadoes are going to be. We have the solution for tornado season. The LRC provides a solution for when and where tornadoes are most likely going to happen. And the LRC provides so much more, predicting a hurricane 1 week, 2 weeks, 6 months in advance. You have time to prepare. Businesses have time to prepare.
Yeah.
It's not 100% accurate, okay? But the LRC itself is actually close to 100% accurate. The river of error there is flawless, okay? It is oscillating within a range. That's the whole premise of the LRC. Our predictions based on what we know now are accurate, but not 100%.
Sure.
So, but predicting a hurricane with 65% accuracy is good 6 months out, 3 months out.
Yeah, and that was one of our big things in Miami. It was like, look at 2022. Look at the hurricane prediction that came out March 23rd, 2022. We put out a press release, and we specifically said, and then everybody was tracked, and like, we won. Yeah. That's just the way it was. Like, we didn't game those numbers.
Yeah, our prediction for hurricane season, and that was with about 25 to 30 other government, university, and private organizations that we all put in our predictions at the beginning of the season. Only one forecast was for below average hurricane season, and it looked like the outlier. Right. The other 2020 prediction looks like, oh, well, how can that company be right? Usually you wipe out the outlier, not when it's the only one that was right. Everyone thought it would be a hyperactive hurricane season last year, and it was less than active until it got to November. All of a sudden it was active in November. Hurricane season in November. Now, our forecast for this hurricane season is coming up soon.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
I'm putting you on the spot here. Feel free to say no. But I do remember late in the hurricane season last year, wasn't NOAA, there was a little bit of, I don't know, I'll use the word controversy between us of what was even qualifying as a tropical storm and what was qualifying as a hurricane. Maybe it got the feeling like they were being a little generous in dishing out.
Well, I think...
Or do you think it was adding to the ACE?
I think there was a tropical storm Colin that formed inland on the South Carolina coast. Tropical storms don't form inland. I guess it's possible. It was right near the coast, but they named it for about 6 hours to 12 hours, and then it wasn't named. They just got an extra name in there.
Sure.
So I don't know.
That's a little squirrely.
I don't know what.
Okay.
I don't know if there's motivation for them to name things when they predicted a whole bunch of them.
I'm not screaming conspiracy. You know, it's just a wacky incident.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think so, but. Hey, listen, we'll see what happens this year.
Because then that's one more named storm that popped up that maybe in past seasons it wouldn't have been considered a named storm.
One premise of what the LRC is. Remember, the LRC, every year a unique pattern sets up in October, and into October, November it sets up, and then we develop what the cycle is, and we find out what it is, and we make these incredible, uncanny predictions. And then the next October it sets up again. So hurricane season that traditionally everyone thinks starts in May or June, okay? 15 years in a row we had like an early storm in May. But last year we did not, which was also a sign it was going to be quiet. But the hurricane season traditionally begins in May or June. Per what we believe, and it'll be one of the peer review paper we write in the future, Okay, I don't know when it'll be, 10 years from now or 5 years from now.
We got more work to
but
do.
It'll be coming. The LRC suggests that the hurricane season begins in October or November. It goes dormant, and then it reappears in May and June and July as the waters warm over the tropics. So the hurricane this year, hurricanes, we had Nicole hit Florida. We had Martin over the North Pacific. We had Carl and Lisa. We had 4 named storms after the LRC set up.
Right.
Last year we had 1, which was an indication it was going to be less active. Now, do those 4 mean it's going to be more active this year? It's certainly a sign it will be at least as active, if not more active than last year, but more on that to come.
It's a good call. I mean, it's tough because let's say we put out a forecast that says, yeah, I mean, it's hurricane season. It'll be an average hurricane season. And we're at a point where maybe you can't win no matter what. You predict below average. Everybody says, no, you predict average.
We may predict an average. I haven't come to our conclusions yet. That's coming in the next week or so. Yeah. But whether we are in this whole group of all the other forecasts are the same, you can't. Last year, we were the clear winners.
Oh, without a doubt.
And there's a lot to be said about that. And we've been making these hurricane season forecasts for a few years now. And we're getting better and better at it.
I've watched your evolution on it, and
it's getting better.
I've been in awe, my friend. Yeah, it's great.
If you're not getting better, that means you're getting worse.
That would be unfortunate. Right?
So we work hard. I work relentlessly hard at this. And so thank you for sharing with us.
You're doing great. I'm sorry, I'll step off my soapbox. This is just a topic that I'm kind of, I don't know. It always kind of sticks in my craw a little bit. I have a lot of friends in academia. I know a lot of scientists. Right. It is at times a polarizing topic in today's world, just the concept of science. Right. When I don't necessarily think it needs to be. Right. But it is funny, when you find yourself on the outside of something, just trying to knock on the door, and it kind of drives me nuts that people just put their fingers in their ears, and it's silly.
And we've got a voice out there. We're putting our forecasts out there. Some people, people like today say, "Why don't you tell us when you're wrong?" I'm like, well, as you said, it's like we're not going to go, hey, guess what? Weather 2020 was wrong all these times. Now hire us. Okay?
Yeah, well, that's exactly. It's just silly.
First of all, we're not wrong that often. Okay?
True, sure, that's fair.
Secondly, it is amazing and exciting to this day when we predict like this outbreak of severe weather this week. And not only do we say March 20th to 25th, and now it's going to happen the next couple of days. We'll see. Right. Hopefully it's not that bad. We don't need the bad tornadoes.
Good point.
But not only do we predict where it's going to happen on the 24th of March, okay, but we can show how we did it. If a Zoom meeting with any PhD out there, any PhD student, if you want to take on this project, come and call us. We can show you how Hurricane Katrina had a signature 75 days before Katrina to predict the potential for a major disaster. Now, we would never have guessed it would be Katrina. That was always the worst case scenario.
Right.
But the potential would be there, and we could prepare better.
It's a fair point, my friend.
All right.
Golly. Well, I don't know,
I feel like this is your podcast.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make it. This is it's near and dear to my heart.
I love all your points. It was fantastic.
Well, I'm sorry. Yeah, I didn't mean to take it over.
Anyway, hey.
What do you want to forecast?
I forecast it'll be hot this summer. See, some summer critics are going, ooh, watch this. I can do this.
This man is unstoppable.
I'll bet you it's hot in July.
Yeah.
All right.
Golly, he's so good at things.
But what can the LRC do for your agriculture interests out there? We can tell you when the heat wave is most likely.
Right. Yeah.
Going to happen.
Absolutely.
And when it will break down.
That's beautiful guidance.
So,
yeah.
Right. So anyway.
Trends. We're looking at trends, folks.
All right. How long do we go?
Oh, I don't know.
I've got a lunch in 30 minutes.
Oh, man. You got to be starving.
Hey, it's called The Forecast.
You got to feed those guns, my friend.
The Forecast brought to you by Results Personal Fitness.
Dangerous.
I know. Hey, listen, I'm 60 years old. Let's hope I can keep it all natural. All natural.
All natural.
Yeah.
Damn,
I might even try a sugar detox in May. That'll be a topic. Will you do it with me?
I would consider it.
Really?
Well, yeah. That's another
topic for another day. Yeah. All right. The Forecast brought to you by Results and Uphold Home.
Uphold Home.
And
beautiful.
We'll see you the next time. The Forecast with Gary Lezak and Bob Lyons.